One of my favorite stories about Easter is actually a joke. A little boy starts talking to the minister about Easter. And the minister says, "What do you know about Easter?" And the little boy said, "Well, it all started with Passover week, and Jesus came into the city." And the minister said, "Yeah, that's right. That's pretty good." He says, "Well, then the Jews turned against him and turned him over to the Romans." And the minister said, "That's right. And then he was crucified, and he laid in a tomb for 3 days. The tomb was the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea." The minister's like, "Wow." He said, "Well, then what happened?" He said, "Well, then the angels came to the tomb and they rolled the stone back." "Well, what happened after that?" And the little boy said, "Well, it depends. If Jesus sees his shadow, it's 6 more weeks of winter." So he was doing pretty good up till that point. I want to talk with you, and I want you to expand your mind this morning as we talk about Easter, because Easter was the holiday it was the Christian holiday that was celebrated first. Christmas was not. In ancient times, you celebrated the day of someone's death. You didn't celebrate the day of their birth. And so Easter was actually celebrated long before. They show that Easter was actually celebrated in the 2nd century, which was a long time ago, considering. And as we look at this idea of Easter, historically, a lot of what happened in the Bible, a lot of what we know happened in the Bible according to the Gospels, historically also can be verified. The resurrection of Jesus Christ, probably not. Breathe. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because the Gospel of Mark was the first gospel that was written. It was written around 40 CE, and it makes no mention of a resurrection. In fact, the Gospel of Mark was rewritten during the Middle Ages to add in, "Oh, by the way, he came back." But that was not in there originally. Every other gospel, except for the Gospel of John, is a derivative of the Gospel of Mark. Later on, it was added that Jesus had a resurrection and that Jesus came back. Now, what we know is that the story of Jesus being put to death, lying in a tomb for 3 days, and then being resurrected and seen by his followers is actually an ancient story that's attributed to the Sumerian goddess Inanna. Hercules has the exact same story. There are literally dozens of gods who have this exact same story. If you want to see, there's a great documentary called The God Who Wasn't There on Netflix that explains all of this, okay? The Gospels don't even agree on what happened. If you do read Mark, if you read Luke and John and Matthew, they don't even agree. Some say that there was 2 angels. Some say that there was 1 angel. Some say that there was this. Some say that there was that. I tend to be a pretty logical guy. Historically, there's no evidence that Jesus Christ was resurrected. I personally choose to believe it. That's it. I just personally choose to believe it. And whether you believe it or not really has no impact. As the people in the other parts of the world would say, who cares if it happened or not? It's a good story. Westerners get all caught up with exactly when did Jesus die and when did his blood come back into his body and all of this, and can it all be designated on MRIs? And people in the other part of the country go, who cares? It's a great story. Now, you've got to understand that the early Christians were not Christians. They were what? They were Jews. They followed, and these people actually believed that Jesus was the Messiah. They actually believed that Jesus was the Messiah, but if you go back and read the Old Testament, the Jews believed that the Messiah was going to be a king, and the king was going to come in, he was going to liberate them, originally from Egypt, then ultimately from Rome, and from the Sumerians and all the others, the Babylonians that the Israelites had so many problems with. They believed that the Messiah was going to come and was going to be a warrior who was going to deliver them. Was Jesus a warrior? No, Jesus was a lover, not a fighter. Jesus was very laid back. He was the opposite. And yet all these people believed him. And nowhere in the prophecy does it say that the Messiah can be killed. I want you to think about that. These people actually believe that this is the word Messiah means the anointed one, the king that God has sent us is finally here. Hosanna, hooray. He's dead? How? Better, why would the Messiah die? Well, someone reasoned he died for the same reason that all the animals die in the temple. We take the animals to the temple. By the way, you go to a church today, it's not like a temple back then. Think more like a butcher shop. Because the priests would slaughter the animals, and the animals took on the sins of the congregation or the people. And people began to believe that that's what Jesus did too. Many people still believe that. The thing is, whether it happened or not, the people needed a resurrection. In their minds and in their hearts, they needed a resurrection. They needed new life. They needed a change. Raise your hand if you need change. Raise your hand. Seriously, social proof. Raise your hand. Everybody look around the room. Almost every hand is up. Don't you find that interesting? We all want change. People who are the way you wish you could be want to change. Doesn't that tick you off? Think about that. There are people who you look at and you go, man, I wish I was like that person. I wish I was like that. And then they got their hand up. How dare they? And we think that there is something wrong with change. Change is the number one thing that we all want. It is also the number one thing that we all fear. And yet life is about change. I was reading a book the other day on marketing, and y'all know I'm a writer, and so I market my books and everything. And this thing said, the number one thing you can say is, this book will change your life. And I've always thought that's coming from a negative perspective, to be honest with you. In other words, there's something wrong with your life. Now, can your life evolve? Can your life change? Can your life grow? Absolutely, certainly. But to change your life, it's like this life is wrong. And yet, for some reason, we all want to change our lives. It's ongoing. It's ongoing. As Gertrude Stein said, when you get there, there is no there. There. You just want to continue to change and to grow. And we look at ourselves and we say, what the heck is wrong with me that I can't just accept things exactly the way they are? Well, that's nice and that's enlightenment and that's a part of the process, but change is a part of human beings. That's what we are. That's what this story is about. It's about a man dying or a God dying to what he was and coming back as so much more. It's Luke Skywalker after Yoda. It's every Joseph Campbell story we've ever heard. It's our story. That's why we love it. We're ongoing change machines. Somebody asked me the other day if I'd write a book on change, and I said, well, why would I do that? And what do I know about change? And they said, well, let's see, you lost 100 pounds, you've been on Oprah, you've changed your life in so many ways. And so I got to thinking about this. And here's what I've discovered, because a lot of us struggle with change. A lot of us can't seem to make change. And I find that it's sort of a 3-step process. And the first 2 steps are the same. The first step, you ready for this, in change? Irritation. You've got to have something that's bugging you or something wrong. This book I was reading about marketing books, you know what it said? People only buy books to resolve issues they know they have. Take that in for a second. People only buy books to resolve issues that they know they have. They were talking about this woman who was a world expert on safety, and she wanted to become a famous author on safety. Problem is, nobody knows they have that problem. And to go around and say, ooh, you're unsafe, but I can make you safe, nobody buys that. But When my daughter and I had a fight and she had slammed the door and walked out about 6 months ago, or about a year ago, I went, I have a problem. I didn't know I had a problem. Now I know I have a problem. So what did I do? I went looking for step 2, and that's information. Step 1 is irritation. Man, this hurts. Man, this bugs. There's got to be a better way to do this. This is driving me crazy. Whatever. That's your irritation. That's the divine discontent. That is God pushing you forward by you getting irritated. Step 2 is information. Now, when Leah and I had an issue, what I did was I went to Audible and started looking at books on parenting teenagers. Why the heck not? This is what people who change their lives do. They go looking for information, but people who don't change their lives also go looking for information. Here's what happens. The people who change their lives go to people who have already done it. They read books. I weighed 9,000 pounds and now I'm a Victoria's Secret model. I want to read that book, okay? They've done it. They have results, okay? People who succeed in changing their lives seek out people who have done the results. That's the information they look for. People who don't change their lives go to everybody else and say, I want to do this. I want to be a better parent. I want to be a better parent. And these other people who don't want to change their lives think, man, if Will's a better parent, that's going to make me look worse by comparison. I don't really want him to be a better parent. They would never come out and tell you that, but that is subtly beneath the surface. I remember when I was 287 pounds in the 11th grade and I started going to Weight Watchers and started losing weight. And my mother was always like, oh, honey, you're getting too skinny. This was when I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now. Don't you want to eat this? Don't you want to eat that? My mother struggled with her weight her whole life. People who don't change go to other people and say, hey, they'd go to their spouse, hey, you know what? I realize I'm a doctor and we make $300,000 a year, but I've always wanted to, make stained glass, and I think I'm going to quit. What do you think the spouse is going to say? Oh, no, you're not. And yet it's kind of amazing. You look at people. Marty was a deputy juvenile officer for 25 years, and she left and started yoga. We're all grateful for that. I was in sales most of my life, and then I became a writer and a minister, and I was scared to do it. But what I did was I asked people who had quit and had done it. So step 1 is irritation. Step 2 is information. The problem is that people who don't change get information from people who haven't changed themselves and therefore have a vested interest in you not doing it. But the people who do change, they look for people who've done it. Will Smith says the key to living is running and reading. Running, because every time you go running, which I don't do anymore, every time you go running, you've got to stare down that monster inside of you who says you can't do it, that ego. He says you need to actively seek out that ego and stare it down as often as you can. The second thing is reading, because he says there's not a problem you've had that somebody hasn't already had and written a book about it. I read on average 20 books a year, and they are not, Twilight series or anything like that. It's all about, and I've noticed that. This is what I'm starting to notice, by the way. When somebody asks me why some people change and some people don't, the people who change are always looking for books and DVD programs and things to inspire them to change. Other people look for information that keeps them where they are. So irritation, information is number 2. By the way, you might want to, when you're seeking for information, talk to God, just a thought. There's the infinite universe there too that can talk to you, so that you can get information that way. The third step is where they completely disappear. They separate. We start off with irritation, we then go to information, but because of the information that the non-change people get, their third step is resignation. I give. I can't change. Heck, I talked to my aunt, she couldn't change. I talked to the guy down the street, he couldn't change either. I've deliberately not talked to anybody who has. But I'm resigned to the fact that I'm just going to be this way. The people who change, application, 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 application. Raise your hand if you've read a book that you thought would change your life. Raise your hand if it really didn't. I'm being honest. I'm going to leave my hand up here too. You know why? I didn't apply it. I didn't apply it. I didn't apply it. We all need a resurrection in our lives. Ongoing. Ongoing. That's what we need to remember. Life's like yoga. You're always tweaking that pose, baby. You're always tweaking that pose. And that's what it is, and that's what makes it good, and that's what makes it interesting. So if you need a resurrection, if you need a new life, you're irritated. That's good. Don't get upset. That's good. That's your motivation. Step 2 is make sure you only get the information from the people who've done it themselves and who will inspire you. That's the other interesting thing. Everybody who's done it will say, of course you can do it. Everyone who hasn't done it will tell you what? Exactly. Isn't that crazy? The people who've never tried are the experts on you not being able to do it. But the ones who've done it have gone, of course you can do it. Hell, if I did it, you can do it. And then once you discern the information, apply, apply, apply. Brian Tracy says that we grow like this. I don't know if I can do it with my knee very well. Think about a ladder. Information, application. Information, application. So who do you want to be this time next year? How do you want to change? You get to choose. You get to choose. And when you decide, look for the right information and apply it. And you can't help but succeed. God doesn't play favorites. It just works. Take somebody's hand. Let's close in prayer. Infinite Spirit, we celebrate the framework that has allowed people to change throughout millennia. We celebrate that all we need to do is to notice that divine discontent and act on it by talking to those who can get us through it. And then as we apply, we shift, and guess what, God? The process starts all over again. For such is life, and we are grateful.